Hello everyone. Since the end of World War II, Saudi Arabia has been a strategic ally of the United States. Their relationship is mutually beneficial. One has a strong military that plays the role of protector and arms supplier, while the other is the top oil exporter that helps maintain the dollar's dominance. With such a tight bond, it seemed like everything would always go smoothly. However, recently conflicts have started to emerge that threaten to break apart this alliance. Why has this happened? Let's explore together. In 2013, for the first time after nearly 60 years of alliance, Saudi Arabia threatened to sever ties with the US. The reason was that the two sides disagreed over the civil war in Syria. For Saudi Arabia, this was not a war between the government and rebels, but a proxy war between them and Iran. If their enemy emerged victorious, Saudi Arabia would face grave security threats. Therefore, they actively provided money and weapons to the rebels, but to no avail. Saudi Arabia expected the US to take decisive action against their common enemy Iran. However, the Obama administration refused to launch airstrikes. As a result, after fighting for some time, the Iranian-backed government prevailed and Iran expanded its influence in the region. After this event, Saudi Arabia was extremely angry at the US. They refused a non-permanent seat on the UN Security Council to demonstrate their attitude. In 2015, just as the Iranian government suppressed the rebels, the US signed a nuclear deal with Iran to gradually lift sanctions in exchange for limiting their nuclear program. Saudi Arabia tried but failed to prevent this. They believed the US was being naive. Such a deal merely provided Iran economic relief while they could secretly continue seeking nuclear weapons. In 2018, newly elected President Trump pleased Saudi Arabia by withdrawing from the Iran nuclear deal. But many subsequent events strained the two sides. First, Saudi Arabia agreed with the US to mediate the hostility between Israel and Palestine. However, they were disappointed when Washington recognized Jerusalem as Israel's capital. Jerusalem had been an internationally disputed area that no one had the right to control. Second, in June 2018, when oil was $74 a barrel, Saudi Arabia pushed OPEC members to limit production to increase prices. But then the US punished them by threatening sanctions if they did not raise output. This resulted in Saudi Arabia losing massive profits as prices dropped to $64 a barrel. Third, in October 2018, journalist Jamal Khashoggi, a Washington Post columnist critical of the Saudi government, was murdered at the Saudi consulate in Turkey. Afterwards, the U.S. Treasury imposed sanctions on 17 Saudi officials suspected of involvement. Reportedly, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman himself ordered the killing. However, President Trump accepted the prince's denial of responsibility. And so, conflicts between the U.S. and Saudi Arabia spiraled. Recently, Washington has frequently criticized and threatened Saudi Arabia over human rights records, including Prince Mohammed's crackdown on dissidents, intervention in Yemen's civil war, and abuse of Shia Muslims. With Saudi Arabia's authoritarian regime, talk of human rights irritates them. Nevertheless, Washington persists in speaking about this. In 2021, they punished Saudi Arabia by banning sales of offensive weapons to what was once a loyal customer, buying hundreds of billions of dollars worth of arms. Saudi Arabia feels they are being treated unfairly. Aside from these visible conflicts, the US and Saudi Arabia have another intractable problem. Since 2018, the US has become the #1 oil exporting country after developing efficient fracking technology. Thus, they have become a competitor to Saudi Arabia in exports while also relying far less on its oil, now importing just 6% from Saudi Arabia. It is also because of the aforementioned conflicts that when war broke out in Ukraine, Saudi Arabia did not stand with its US ally in sanctioning Russia. Instead, it doubled oil imports from Moscow for refining. Last July, President Biden visited Saudi Arabia to ask them and OPEC members to increase oil output. However, the result he got was no. Why don't you do it instead of telling us what to do? High oil prices are causing economic hardship in the US with inflation, so they desperately need help. Although it is the top exporter with about 3 million barrels a day, the US is also the largest consumer at 20 million barrels a day. When prices rise, export earnings cannot make up for the costs, so they want stable prices. With reserves readily available in US territory, production could be increased, but it is more expensive than importing, so they want their ally Saudi Arabia's aid. Now the US is considering lifting its ban on offensive weapons sales in exchange for support. The rift between the two long-term allies does not stop there. In 2021, Saudi Arabia and Russia signed a military cooperation agreement at an arms exhibition outside Moscow. Details were not disclosed, but it raised suspicions from the US. Moreover, they have cooperated with Moscow multiple times to reduce oil output and drive up prices. And it's not just Russia. Saudi Arabia is also fostering increasingly close ties with China. According to the US, Prince Mohammed is seeking Beijing's help in developing his own ballistic missiles, while the two sides also have nuclear cooperation. In 2011, Saudi Arabia announced it would build 16 nuclear reactors with $80 billion of Chinese assistance. This makes the US suspect they have ambitions to develop nuclear weapons, since their enemy Iran has declared capability to build a nuclear bomb. Today it is not the US, but China that is Saudi Arabia's largest trading partner. All the above helps us envision that the relationship between Washington and Riyadh is entering a period of grave crisis. However, as long as Saudi Arabia has enemies, they will still need the US regardless of conflicts.